Assalamu alaikum, YouTubers, friends, family. Just a brief video to first of all thank all the new subscribers and also to thank those who have left very positive comments. It means a lot to me, but I'm not sort of unrealistic. I do expect people to also perhaps send some critical messages and even to send some very negative messages. It happens on YouTube, freedom of speech. As long as people, convey what they earnestly feel and not sort of, be just mindlessly negative. So thank you for the positive messages and for all the sign-ups. And I ask you, if you haven't signed up on my channel yet, please do so. And, it helps me also if I get feedback and I could improve the work that I'm doing. But why am I speaking to you? There's an important question I think that I've sensed from some of the people, and that is, am I promoting the Quranite agenda or the Quranism or Ahlul Quran, whatever you may call it? And I think, it's just fair that I should clarify the position. Now, first of all, let me say to you that, and this is an honest position, I sincerely and honestly do not subscribe to any label or tag. If you speak to a medical doctor or to an accountant, you don't get an accountant that believes in A, B, or C, or a medical doctor that believes in this biology or that biology. There's one biology and there's one system of accounting. And so, even when it comes to law, you cannot practice law in a country and have different schools of law. You have to subscribe to the same broad framework of the law if you want to work as a jurisprudent or as a lawyer. And I believe, as a researcher, as somebody seeking, as a talib, as somebody who is on a mission of discovery, it would be senseless for me to claim some sort of destination. Let me be honest with you. I have absorbed much from many Muslim schools of thought and even from non-Muslim schools of thought. Believe me. And I believe that I have a healthy, sound mind and that I could process information and that I could formulate a position that makes me, or that will allow me to be accountable for that position. Because remember, one of the few most important aspects of our deen, of the religion of Islam, is the accountability on the final day. And so we need to be very cautious about the positions we take. But, okay, be that as it may. Coming to the Quranist or the Quranite agenda, and I'm going to now quote a good friend of mine, Mr. Bongo. Is a very close friend of mine, and we are political comrades for more than 40 years. And he always refers to the creepy crawlies when he refers to these ultra ideological characters who are on such a tangent in terms of their ideology that they forget about the real world. And he calls them the creepy crawlies because they really have very little value to the real world, because they're so busy investigating and hair splitting and trying to be lost in their own mind project. And so I think that is how I see a lot of what is going on in the Quranite community. First of all, there's section of the community that are outright retrogressive, that are pro-Israel, and I can never ever associate with that. And those are some Egyptian scholars. I don't even think I could come to the name. I think they are the Ahlul Quran. And I see some of them being absolutely counter-revolutionary and, in fact, walking with the oppressor because they've relocated to the US and their positions are very pro-Israel. So although I don't reject all the ideas, there's something to learn from them and from their work, I can't associate, really with being in a sort of a brotherly relationship with him. If you are walking with your oppressor. Then there are others, I've looked at the work of Sam Garens, at his translation, and I also want to give him a lot of credit for a lot of original thinking, and really he did his contribution to the understanding of the Quran and to deriving meaning from the Quran has been, how can I call it? It's been magnificent and very broad, and I think he will be rewarded for his effort. But there's always a but. But I do believe that Sam Garens, with all the respect that I have for the work, he did carry into his work as a scholar a lot of his English European upbringing. And I'm absolutely not a Black Lives Matter type of person. I'm not a white man hater, and I absolutely am colorblind as far as races and cultures are concerned. I believe that just as white people have baggage, Indian people, Pakistani people, African people have baggage, and we all need to deal with our baggage, with our cultural baggage. But I do believe he carries too much of that European English white man in him, and there's an arrogance in the English white man, and it is understandable. It's not justifiable, but having been at the helm of world of basically global culture, and being at the forefront militarily, scientifically for close to 200 years or 300 years even by now. This city that I'm in, this town, was colonized by the English in 1795 the first time. So they've been ruling us for over 200 years. And believe me, I'm an expert at English arrogance, and I know when I see it. And there's a little bit of that, and I would wish and I would ask Allah to just, maybe help him a bit on that and guide him on that. And if he ever sees this, maybe he'll take it as a positive, constructive comment. And then, of course, there's the problem with the flat earth. I'm a scientist by trade. I've studied science. I'm a mathematics graduate at university also. And believe me, I'm prepared to turn every rock and to study it and to look at every given, so-called given fact that I've been given at school and at university and by my religion and by my culture. But, as far as the flat earth theory is, I would like to put the best understanding on his position, because he really advances the flat earth idea. So what I'm going to try to see in his explanation is that the earth would be a four-dimensional curve. So I'm not going to go into it, but it's complicated, but we know that space-time, as Einstein has said, is a four-dimensional curve. And so maybe what he means is, if he means it in that way, then fine. But if he's going to tell me that the earth is this disk with poles being the periphery, and with the sun being in a funny way, and that we are a flat disk floating in space, then that's absolute and total nonsense. And the easiest proof, I'm not going to even merit that position with proof, but the easiest proof is, if you put a disk down on the table in front of your flat disk, and you put a little man on that disk, and you put a little figurine on there, that figurine will be able to see mountains all around. That figurine will be able to see, if that is the model, where we have a model of disk with the poles being mountainous surrounding a scene, then the view from that would be completely different from the view we have here. And so I cannot see Australia from here. Why not? Because Australia is not on a flat disk. Australia is on the other side of the curvature. So unfortunately, there I have a problem with that also. And I hope his understanding is different. But that's a major problem I have is that. So we look at the Ahlul Quran, we look at the Quranite community, and then I want to then thirdly make a comment about the broad attitude and what can I call it, the ethos within the Quranist or the Quranite community. I do get a sense that there is a departure from the warm-blooded, loving sense of solidarity that I believe the Muslim community always has prided itself on. I spent time in Middle Eastern countries, North Africa, and in the Horn of Africa, and I was also in the Arabian Peninsula. I don't think much of the Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula, but what I do treasure and value about the people in Muslim communities is that warm-blooded solidarity that you feel, that love, that concern, that kindness. And believe me, I've actually sensed it in some of the comments on my videos here. So I do think I have attracted, or I have the right people here that share that with me. Because certainly I don't want to be part of any cold, clinical, technical team that is analyzing the Quran and forgetting the love, the spiritual depth that ought to accompany any reading of the Quran. And if you have to travel, you have to be in a Muslim society to see that loving heart, that love for people and love for Allah. And I associate it with some sort of irfan, as the Shia call it, or Sufism. And it is the history of Sufism, because really Sufism or Tasawwuf or irfan is about gnosis. It is about connecting with God and being one, or being close in proximity with Allah. And the Quran refers, by the way, to the concept of qarbun ilallah, to taqreeb, to reach proximity to Allah. So that is just a general comment on the community, which I think is also somewhat sad. And I would like to see that community becoming a lot more kind and loving and spiritual in the attitude, and not to duplicate and to become a Western copy with a different text, and we are like these technical, cold, clinical scholars. And those are my criticisms of the Ahlul Quran. But be that as it may, now let me come to the main point. The ideas that are contained in that general trend are very powerful ideas. The idea that Hadith has overwhelmed and outshined and eclipsed the message of the Quran is absolutely an idea that I identify with. And I'm glad I woke up. I'm glad I woke up, and about 7 years ago, let me tell you the story. I was an ardent student of the Shia ideas, and also always a student. I'm only a student. I've never ever adopted the titles or terms or technique or tags, and for me it was just a matter of investigating some of the ideas, and there were some core ideas that were extremely appealing. And I approached a good friend of mine, not actually a good friend, but an acquaintance, and he had authored a book recently, and I wanted to speak to him about his book. But I also thought, let me share with him some of the ideas within the Zaydiyah or the Mu'tazila school of thought. And I thought I could maybe present him with some of these Mu'tazila or rationalist ideas. And that is one thing I am, because I don't believe it's a school of thought. It's an approach. I'm definitely a Mu'tazila. I'm definitely a rationalist. And I although you can be a rationalist and be in a Quran Ahlul Quranite Community, a rationalist and being a Shia. All Shias are technically rationalists. You can be a rationalist and be a Sunni also. I believe, and of course the Mu'tazilas, the early Mu'tazilas were very ardent Sufis also. So they do go together very well. Our golden age of scientists and scholars and biologists, these were all of the Mu'tazila and of the Tasawwuf. They combine love of Allah and love of knowledge. And so I believe it's a beautiful, and that's the other thing I could claim, is that the ideas of Tasawwuf or Irfan, I do embrace those also. And so I was telling this good friend of mine, he became a good friend afterwards, about these ideas. And then he fired back with his ideas about Hadith being overplayed and overruling the Quran. And instead of me converting him, he ended up converting me. And at the end of the day, I'm so glad that Allah has sent me to him. It was about 6 years ago, because there were some clear questions in my mind by that time about the Hadith. ISIS was very forceful around 2013 when they were slitting people's throats and throwing people off buildings and just practicing their brand of barbarism, which they called Islam. But the sad thing is that they actually quoted hadiths when they committed all these atrocities, and they're very big into hadiths, weak hadiths, strong hadiths, any hadiths. And the point is that suddenly the penny dropped, that hadiths are actually a source of disunity. And I decided, unlike my friend who had completely rejected hadiths, I did not go that far. I would say more that I took the line of Hassan Farhan al-Maliki, the scholar from the Arabian Peninsula who's under arrest by the Saudi family. I more took to his understanding that hadiths have no divine or sacred value. They have only the value of knowledge that any other historical document has. So the same value that we can attach in the work of Plato or Aristotle or the Old Testament or the New Testament, we can absorb the hadith with that same type of value. And when it obviously enforces or confirms the Holy Quran, well and good, and we then work with it. But to call it sacred and to call it divine and to call it a source of divine law, absolutely I reject that idea. And I do reject, because the founding father that really introduced that idea was Imam Shafi'i, the scholar of the 3rd Islamic century. And really he differed with Abu Hanifa, he differed with Malik. And so I cannot associate with that position. It's a Talmudic position. I've put videos out of that where the Mishnah and the Jerusalem and the Babylonian Talmud are really narratives and stories and fables that are attached to the holy text of the revealed text from the Almighty, and I cannot tolerate it. I cannot accept it. I'm not saying that I would not look at hadith books. Yes, of course, I need to consult hadith to understand certain terms, words, because there's ancient Arabic, there's Arabic being used. And when I met with some of the Ahlul Quran adherents or followers in Cape Town at one stage, I was really worried that they were completely throwing away everything, because there's a body of literature that must have some value. And even if it doesn't have if it's not a divine source, it has some historical value, it has some literary value. And so I really had an argument with them at one point, and they didn't invite me back to their meetings. And so I because the point I made is, how do you get to meaning when you're dealing with Quran and you're trying to get to meaning of certain words? Yes, you're not going to take give a blank check to the hadith, but you do use a dictionary, don't you? I use a dictionary, an ancient dictionary, a classic Arabic dictionary, and some of those dictionaries actually have hadiths in. They have hadiths in. So I asked them the question, don't you use dictionaries? Because the dictionary is a source other than the Quran. And so we need sources of information. It's not divine sources. So I think, I hope I've clarified to you the position. As far as fasting is concerned, I haven't gotten to the point where I am prepared to break with 1.6 billion Muslims in having a one-man fast somewhere in September. I can't see that happening. Me having a one-man fasting show in September when there's some harvest full moon. I do believe we have to move on. These are not core, critical, central issues. The central issue in the Quran is Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. Fasting has been prescribed to you in a set number of days. What we are doing today is Ramadan. Maybe not the exact same format as the Prophet. We don't have Ramadan in the middle of summer. But I am going to add a lot of credence to the existing community, the global community, and to forge solidarity with them. The same with Salah. Although I understand Salah to be a far more transcendent concept than prayer. In fact, the word Salah has absolutely no close, not even any close meaning to the word prayer. It is much more closer to the meaning connectedness. And so in my translation, I really expand on the understanding of Salah. It's the only way the Quran really makes sense. But I do not abandon the idea of a ritual Salah also. We can debate about the nature and the form. And it really takes a lot of the stress away of have you kept your fingers right, have you kept your arms right in Salah. Salah is something that we by agreement and convention conduct in a certain way when we in a gathering, and I believe it's fair just to go along with that. So there's a lot of other issues, and I treat them all one by one. I hope I don't just go on too long. So I hope this has been of some benefit to you. Thank you very much for watching.